Sometimes the loudest truths of our lives are not spoken in words. They are whispered in silence. There are moments in life when the world feels too heavy, when the noise around us is deafening, and yet the only thing that holds us together is the quiet strength we carry inside. Have you ever noticed that in the middle of chaos, when you finally pause, when you allow yourself to sit still, even for a moment, that is when you begin to hear your heart speak? We live in a world that celebrates noise, that glorifies speed, and that tells us the louder you are, the stronger you must be. We are constantly surrounded by voices, opinions, and expectations. Social media shouts at us, the world demands our attention, and sometimes even the people closest to us fill our lives with endless words. But what if I told you that silence itself has a voice? That stillness is not weakness, but one of the purest forms of strength. I know silence can feel uncomfortable. It makes us restless because we are so used to filling the emptiness with sound. Think about it. When we sit with someone and the conversation goes quiet, we immediately reach for something to say because we fear the silence. We think it means distance, awkwardness, or even rejection. But silence does not mean absence. Silence can mean presence. It can mean listening. It can mean holding space for something greater than words. In fact, some of the most powerful moments in life are not marked by what is spoken, but by what is felt in the stillness between the words. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself, without music, without scrolling, without distraction, just you and your thoughts? It sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things to do in today's world. We avoid silence because it confronts us with truths we may not be ready to face. In the stillness, we can no longer hide from our feelings, our fears, or our deepest desires. And yet, that is where healing begins. That is where clarity is born. Silence gives us the space to meet ourselves, to hear the voice inside that is often drowned out by the chaos of the world. Silence also holds incredible power in relationships. Have you ever sat with someone who was grieving, someone in deep pain, and realized that no words you could ever say would be enough? In that moment, silence becomes the most powerful gift. Sitting with them, holding their hand, being fully present, without trying to fix or explain. That silence speaks volumes. It tells them, you are not alone. I am here. That is the strength of stillness. It carries messages that words cannot. We underestimate it because we live in a culture that equates strength with volume, but silence can be louder than any shout. And here is the truth I want you to hold on to. Silence is not emptiness. It is not a void. It is full. It is full of wisdom, full of truth, full of healing, if we dare to lean into it. There is courage in choosing to pause, to listen, to breathe deeply instead of rushing to respond. There is courage in letting silence do the talking when words would only complicate. There is courage in sitting still when the world is telling you to run faster, speak louder, do more. Strength is not always found in action. Sometimes it is found in the stillness before action. So today, I want to invite you to rethink silence, to stop running from it, and instead, to embrace it. Because silence speaks too. And when you learn to listen, you will discover a strength within yourself that no noise can give you. All our lives, we have been taught to equate silence with weakness. We are told that if we don't speak up, we will be forgotten. If we don't raise our voices, we will be overlooked. From classrooms to boardrooms, from family dinners to social media platforms, we have been conditioned to believe that the louder we are, the more powerful we must be. Silence, in the eyes of society, is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for shyness, for fear, for not knowing enough, for being less. People often say, "Why are you so quiet?" As if quietness is a flaw that needs fixing, a wound that needs healing. But silence is not the absence of strength. It is simply a different kind of strength, one that the world does not always know how to measure. Think about the way children in school are often judged. The talkative ones are seen as smart, confident leaders in the making. But the quiet ones, they are labeled as reserved, timid, or even uninterested. Teachers may call on them less because they don't shout their answers. Classmates may overlook them because they don't fight for attention. And yet, so many of those quiet children grow up to become the deepest thinkers, the most empathetic listeners, the ones who carry wisdom that words could never fully express. But society misses it because silence is misunderstood. Even in adulthood, the same pattern continues. At work, the one who speaks the most in meetings is seen as engaged, ambitious, and capable. The one who listens more than they talk is often seen as disengaged, unprepared, or lacking confidence. How often have we judged someone simply because they didn't speak up? How often have we mistaken their silence for weakness, when in reality they were processing, observing, or simply choosing not to add to the noise? We forget that silence is not a void, it is a choice. And often it is the braver choice. Our culture has made noise a symbol of importance. Social media amplifies this more than ever. Everyone is expected to share opinions, to post updates, to comment, to respond instantly. And if you don't, people assume you don't care or that you have nothing to say. But maybe, just maybe, the quiet ones care even more. Maybe they are taking the time to reflect deeply before responding. Maybe they value depth over speed. Maybe their silence is not absence, but presence in its most thoughtful form. I remember a story of a woman who was once described as too quiet to lead. She didn't interrupt, didn't dominate conversations, and didn't feel the need to constantly voice her thoughts. People assumed she wasn't capable of guiding others. But when a crisis hit, she became the anchor everyone leaned on. She had spent years observing, listening, and building a deep well of calm wisdom. And when it mattered most, her silence became her superpower. She didn't need to shout to be heard. She spoke only when necessary. And when she did, every word carried weight because people had learned to trust the stillness behind her voice. Silence is not weakness. Silence is often misunderstood because the world does not always know how to value something that cannot be measured in decibels. Strength has been defined in ways that are noisy: assertiveness, dominance, visibility. But there is a different strength, a quieter one, that is found in patience, in restraint, in the ability to listen and observe before speaking. We need to begin rewriting this narrative. We need to stop equating silence with invisibility. Silence is not invisibility. It is a presence so deep that it doesn't need constant validation. Just because someone is not the loudest voice in the room doesn't mean they aren't the strongest. Sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who carry the room, grounding everyone else without ever needing to prove themselves. So, the next time you meet someone who doesn't rush to fill the silence, don't assume they are weak or lost. Instead, recognize the courage it takes to stay still in a world that glorifies noise. Understand that silence is not a gap waiting to be filled, but a language waiting to be respected. When we shift how we see silence, we begin to unlock its true power. We begin to realize that silence is not a flaw, not a lack, not an emptiness. It is a misunderstood strength that has always been there, waiting to be seen. There is a kind of strength that we rarely talk about. It is not the strength of lifting heavy weights, not the strength of speaking the loudest, and not the strength of running the fastest. It is the strength that comes from stillness, the kind of strength that is born in silence. In those moments when we stop chasing, stop performing, stop pretending, and simply allow ourselves to be. This strength is quiet, but it is unshakable. It does not need to be proven or displayed for the world to applaud. It is the strength that anchors us when everything else around us is falling apart. Think of a storm. The winds are violent, the thunder is deafening, the rain is relentless. But deep in the center of that storm, there is a still place called the eye. In the middle of chaos, there is calm. That is what stillness feels like in our lives. No matter what is happening around us, when we learn to sit in our silence, we find that center, that eye of the storm, where nothing can shake us. Stillness is not weakness. It is the hidden core of resilience. We underestimate how powerful it is to pause. The world teaches us to react instantly, to make decisions quickly, to keep moving no matter what. But there is strength in waiting, in breathing, in choosing not to be rushed. Stillness gives us perspective. It allows us to see the bigger picture. Have you ever noticed how, when you are overwhelmed, your first instinct is to keep going, to do more, to run faster? But it is only when you stop, when you pause, that you begin to see clearly. In the silence, solutions rise to the surface. In stillness, wisdom emerges. It is not the noise that guides us. It is the quiet voice we hear when we finally give ourselves permission to slow down. Some of the greatest leaders, thinkers, and creators in history understood the strength of stillness. They were not afraid to retreat into silence, to disconnect from the noise, to sit with their own thoughts. They knew that clarity does not come from rushing, but from resting. They knew that sometimes the most courageous act is not charging forward, but pausing long enough to choose the right direction. Stillness is the soil where creativity grows, where courage takes root, and where healing begins. There is also strength in stillness, because it teaches us mastery over ourselves. Anyone can react in anger. Anyone can be swept away by fear. Anyone can get lost in the chaos of emotions. But it takes real strength to sit still with your feelings, to let them rise and fall without letting them control you. It takes strength to pause before you speak, to breathe before you act, to wait before you decide. That pause, that moment of silence, is where your power lies. It is where you reclaim control over yourself, instead of handing it away to circumstances. Stillness is also the foundation of deep listening. When you are still, you can truly hear, not just the words others speak, but the emotions behind them, the stories between the lines, the truths that go unspoken. Stillness allows you to be present in a way that noise never can. It allows you to connect on a level beyond words, to truly see and understand another person. And that connection, that kind of presence, is one of the strongest forces in the world. But perhaps the greatest strength of stillness is that it reconnects us with ourselves. In silence, we cannot hide behind distractions. We come face to face with our fears, our doubts, our wounds, but also with our dreams, our values, and our true selves. It takes courage to sit in that space. It takes strength to face what we usually avoid. Yet when we do, we come out stronger, clearer, more grounded. Stillness becomes the place where we meet ourselves again, where we remember who we are beneath all the noise. So the next time you feel weak, because you are silent, the next time someone mistakes your stillness for passivity, remember this: there is strength in stillness that the world cannot see. It is the strength that steadies you in the storm, that guides you when you are lost, that heals you when you are broken. It is the strength that whispers when the world shouts. And it is always there, waiting for you in the quiet. There are wounds that words cannot touch. There are pains so deep that no explanation, no advice, no speech can make them go away. In those moments, silence becomes the greatest healer. We often think healing requires answers, solutions, or endless conversations. But sometimes healing begins in the absence of words, in the stillness that allows the soul to breathe again. Silence does not erase pain, but it creates the space where pain can soften, where it can be held gently instead of ignored or rushed away. Think of grief. When someone we love is gone, people rush to comfort us with words. They say, "I'm sorry for your loss," or "they're in a better place," or "stay strong." And while their intentions are good, those words often feel small against the vastness of our pain. In truth, what helps us most in grief is not the words people say, but the moments when someone sits quietly beside us, holding our hand, offering presence without pressure. In that silence, we feel seen. We feel safe. We feel less alone. Silence has a way of reaching into the places words cannot go, of touching the deepest part of our sorrow with compassion that does not need to be spoken. Silence heals because it allows us to sit with our emotions instead of running from them. When we are constantly surrounded by noise and distraction, we push away what we feel. We scroll, we talk, we stay busy, anything to avoid facing the ache within us. But silence calls us back to ourselves. It invites us to stop running and to sit with our grief, our anger, our disappointment. At first, it feels unbearable. The silence makes the pain louder. But if we can stay with it, if we can breathe through it, we begin to realize that emotions, like waves, rise and fall. They do not destroy us. They move through us, and slowly, the storm inside begins to calm. Healing does not come by avoiding the silence. It comes by entering it. There is also healing in silence because it gives us rest. The world pushes us to keep moving, to keep producing, to keep talking. But silence is where our bodies and minds find restoration. Think of the quiet of the early morning before the world wakes up, or the peace you feel when you step into nature, far away from the endless hum of technology. That stillness heals us in ways we don't always recognize. It lowers the weight we carry. It softens our stress. It allows us to remember that we are more than our worries, more than our responsibilities, more than the chaos that surrounds us. Silence reconnects us with the simple truth that we are human, and being human means we need time to rest, to breathe, to just be. And silence heals our relationships too. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for someone is to listen without interrupting, without fixing, without offering advice, to just be still and hold space for them. Silence communicates, I am here for you. I don't need to fill this moment with words to prove it. That kind of presence builds trust. It allows others to open their hearts without fear of being judged or rushed. In silence, we learn that love is not always about saying the right thing. It is about being the right presence. But perhaps the deepest healing silence offers is the healing of our connection with ourselves. In stillness, we begin to hear the quiet voice within us that we have ignored for too long. The voice that says, I am tired. The voice that says, I need to let go. The voice that says, I am ready to begin again. That voice is always there, but we drown it out with noise. Silence is the medicine that brings us back to it. It helps us heal the distance between who we pretend to be and who we really are. So when you are hurting, do not be afraid of silence. Do not run from it. Lean into it. Let it hold you the way no words can. Because silence speaks too. And sometimes its message is not about strength or resilience. It is about healing. And if you allow it, silence will cradle your brokenness gently and patiently until you are ready to stand again. In a world that glorifies constant movement, constant speaking, and constant noise, it takes real courage to choose stillness. It is not easy to step away from the rush when everyone else seems to be running. It is not easy to remain silent when everyone else is shouting their opinions. It is not easy to pause when the world is telling you that pausing means falling behind. But courage has never been about following the crowd. It has always been about doing the thing that feels hardest yet truest. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to be still. We often confuse courage with action. We believe that to be brave, we must always move forward, take risks, and show boldness that others can see. But what if courage also looks like staying quiet when you could easily speak? What if courage looks like stepping back when your ego wants to step forward? What if courage looks like sitting alone in silence, facing your own fears, instead of numbing them with distraction? Courage is not always loud. Sometimes courage is silent. Sometimes courage is still. Think about the times when you have been in a heated argument. Everything in you wants to defend yourself, to fight back, to make your voice heard. But courage in that moment might be choosing to pause instead, to take a breath, to choose not to let anger control you, to give space instead of adding fire. That is not weakness. That is strength. It is easy to react. It is harder to be still. And it is in that stillness that real courage lives. Courage to embrace stillness also means daring to disconnect. It takes boldness to put down your phone, to close your laptop, to walk away from the noise of constant updates and endless notifications. We live in a culture that rewards busyness and visibility. The more active you seem, the more important you appear. But it takes courage to say, I do not need to prove my worth through constant activity. I do not need to be everywhere at once. I am enough, even in stillness. That kind of courage frees you from the chains of comparison. It allows you to find peace in your own presence, instead of searching for it in the approval of others. Stillness also requires courage because it confronts us with ourselves. When we slow down, when we become quiet, all the things we have been avoiding come to the surface. Our doubts, our insecurities, our old wounds. Many of us fear silence because it feels like a mirror, reflecting back truths we do not want to see. But courage is about facing those truths instead of running from them. It is about saying, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is uncomfortable, but I am willing to sit with it because healing lies on the other side of it. When you embrace stillness with courage, you give yourself permission to grow into the person you were always meant to be. There is also courage in choosing not to rush. We live in a fast world, where success is measured by how quickly you can get somewhere. But stillness reminds us that life is not a race. Courage is saying, I will move at my own pace. I will not let the world's pressure decide my rhythm. It takes strength to slow down when everyone else is speeding up. It takes courage to trust that the right opportunities, the right people, and the right answers will come. Not when you chase them frantically, but when you are grounded enough to receive them. Embracing stillness is not about stepping away from life. It is about stepping into life more fully. It is about giving yourself permission to feel, to reflect, to be present. It is about daring to believe that silence has value, that stillness has power, that you are not defined by how loud or how busy you are. And the truth is, it is not just courage that grows in stillness. It is wisdom. It is peace. It is strength. So I invite you to be brave, in a way the world does not always understand. Be brave enough to turn off the noise. Be brave enough to sit with yourself. Be brave enough to let silence speak. Because when you embrace stillness with courage, you do not lose anything. You gain everything. You gain clarity. You gain strength. And most of all, you gain yourself. Silence has walked with us through every season of life. It has been there in our moments of joy, when words were not enough to describe what we felt. It has been there in our pain, when language could not hold the depth of our grief. It has been there in our confusion, waiting patiently until we were ready to hear our own truth. Silence has never abandoned us. It has always been there, whispering quietly in the background, offering us strength, healing, and courage. But so often, we have overlooked it. We have mistaken it for emptiness, when in reality it has been fullness all along. As we stand at this moment, I want you to remember something powerful. Silence is not a weakness to be avoided. It is a gift to be embraced. In stillness, you find yourself again. In silence, you discover wisdom that noise can never give you. And when you choose to honor silence, you are not stepping away from life. You are stepping into it with greater clarity, greater strength, and greater presence. Think about the people you admire most. Often it is not their words alone that inspire you. It is the calm they carry, the grounded presence that surrounds them, the way they can hold a room without even raising their voice. That is the power of silence. It commands without forcing. It speaks without shouting. It influences without demanding attention. And that power lives inside you too. You do not need to always prove yourself by how much you say or how much you do. Sometimes your greatest power is in your ability to stand still, to breathe, and to let your presence speak louder than your words. There will be times in your life when silence feels uncomfortable, when it feels like a void begging to be filled. In those moments, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what if this silence is not emptiness, but space? Space to feel, space to grow, space to simply be. We have been told to fear silence, to escape it, to replace it with endless noise. But what if silence is not something to run from, but something to run toward? What if it is the very thing that has been waiting to strengthen you all along? Silence also gives us perspective. When the world feels overwhelming, silence reminds us that not every battle needs our words. Not every problem needs an instant solution. Not every pain needs to be explained. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is to stay still long enough to let the storm pass, long enough to let clarity emerge. In silence, you find patience. In patience, you find peace. And in peace, you find strength. Let us also remember that silence is a form of connection. It connects us to others when words fail. It connects us to nature when we step outside and hear only the rustling of leaves or the sound of water. And it connects us to ourselves when we are finally brave enough to listen inwardly. Silence is not isolation. It is intimacy. It is intimacy with life, intimacy with truth, intimacy with the soul. And it is in that intimacy that we rediscover who we really are. So as we close, I want you to carry this truth with you. Silence is not empty. Silence is full, full of strength, full of wisdom, full of healing. It speaks a language deeper than words. And when you learn to listen, you will find that it has been guiding you all along. The world will continue to be noisy. People will continue to measure strength by how loud or how fast you can be. But you do not have to live by those rules. You can choose differently. You can choose to honor the quiet moments. You can choose to find strength in stillness. You can choose to let silence speak for you. And when you do, you will discover that you are stronger than you ever imagined. Not because you shouted louder, not because you moved faster, but because you were brave enough to be still. So let silence be your teacher. Let it be your companion. Let it be your strength. Because silence speaks too, and its voice is one of the most powerful you will ever hear.